Fortnite has had 33 seasons, and out of all of them, each has had a hated feature, but only one can be crowned the worst. Today we'll rank every single one, and we'll start with the new Star Wars collab. The Battle Pass was actually pretty well received, bringing General Grievous, Palpatine, and Poe Dameron, and then we have this. The Wookiee Cuddle Team leader has gotten so much hate on social media, but it's still not as bad as what happened in Season 2. In the heist season, there was one item that became way too overpowered, and that's when we were introduced to the kneecapper.
Bye, have a great time.
Nice.
All right, very cool. And then players got the hang of this and dominated lobbies.
Yeah, boy.
Back at the start of Chapter 6, Epic shocked everyone by introducing Godzilla as a playable character. Finally, we could play as a 400-foot tall monster and just terrorize the island. But not gonna lie, he kinda sucked. Sure, the animations and the attention to detail were amazing, but at the end of the day, you just get bodied by other players, making the whole thing pointless. At least they gave him some much needed buffs and upped the rate to 100% on weekends so players can make the most of it before he disappeared. Rewinding the clock to Remix, it was hard to decide the most hated part of this whole season. I'm totally kidding, it was very obvious. You guys really didn't like Ice Spice showing up here, calling out Epic for making this a rap legend season, only to add a newcomer to the pass. Her POI wasn't helping. In reality, it was a cool spin-off of the shark, but many people wrote it off before they even landed here because of the huge doll on the roof. Now we're at the second Marvel season, and there is a hated item that literally everyone can get behind.
Get over here!
Yeah, that's just Cap Shield in action. It literally hit people through any wall, even if it was armored, making it stupidly overpowered, and just fans were not happy about it. But I'd argue the reaction to Cap Shield was nothing compared to the fury of the player base during Wrecked. I mean, for anyone who rage quit during this season, I only have to say the words boss cars, and they'll probably start twitching at the eyes. Not only did Fortnite design an entire season around cars, but they decided to introduce boss versions that had a ton of health, unlimited nitro, and loads of attachments. This meant you could just camp in one the entire game and win without leaving your seat. To this day, it's the only time players didn't complain about boogie bombs coming back because they could finally take on cars. Now let's talk about the Greek Legend season. I mean, Epic did a lot of things right in this. I'd argue 90% of players don't even have a bad thing to say about it, but I can think of one thing that everybody hated. Remember the Greek mythics? You know, the entire reason this theme exists in the first place? Well, halfway through, Fortnite just decided, I don't want to play with you anymore, and bam, they were just gone. Instead, they made room for something totally unrelated to the Greek gods, the Last Airbender. Fans weren't happy that Fortnite basically abandoned their season just to promote a show. And I could also see why players hated Chapter 5 from day one, all thanks to a single weapon. This first season would have gotten off to an amazing start, except every game was ruined by one thing, the Frenzy Auto Shotgun. It let anyone just spam enemies no matter what your skill level was, and it only got worse with the new weapon mods attached. We all know whenever Epic releases a weapon that everyone is good with, it's just a problem. At one point, it was so overpowered that people are dropping gold pumps just to pick up this green frenzy. Isn't that nuts? And I don't blame them, because we had just spent the month before this playing the very first return to Fortnite OG. Yes, at the end of Chapter 4, we were basically living the dream, experiencing the OG map with hundreds of thousands of people. And the numbers don't lie. This period of time is the highest player count Fortnite has ever got since it went public. So what I'm trying to get at here is it's really hard to come up with a hated part of it. Well, I've got one, and I think you'll all agree, especially when I show you just how many comments about this were floating around. Once the mini-map was revealed, everyone was disappointed that we had places like the snow biome, but no Polar Peak. Happy Hamlet was also nowhere to be found, and fans were also praying for the top right to include the volcano. Like, without the volcano, that whole storyline, and no Neo locations, the ending on the map just didn't feel the same. But you can't get it twisted. The OG season was beloved by so many people, and it was a nice change considering, you know, what came before it. We had just been fighting against a time-traveling vampire for like 3 months, and it was painful. It was the first heist season, and man, it had a ton of hated items. Although, I would say the most controversial part of this whole thing was the headlining collab of the season. They revealed that Cabby LeMay was coming to the game. Someone who had never shown interest in Fortnite before this was getting their own Battle Pass slot, and fans were furious about it. They realized Epic just added Cabby as a way to promote the game to his TikTok followers, which meant every time you open the Battle Pass, all you would see is a TikToker. I gotta hand it to Cabby, his set was really cool though, and it had so many details about him. It's just a shame he wasn't a Fortnite creator. Now, I was wondering how long it would take us to get to a season that's hated for its pure existence. And now we're here with a theme that players have never liked, the Wild season. After they threw Primal at us in Chapter 2 and it became one of the most disliked ever, I don't know why they thought it would be a good idea again. You guys make it constantly clear that these kind of themes are just not fun, especially when they add huge biomes like the one in Wilds. There are trees everywhere, making it easy to land on them and just fall to your death, or hard to spot literally one enemy. Now, there were amazing parts of the season's theme, like the Aztec ruins, but I could totally see why the community hate the jungle. I could also see why they begged Epic to nerf Season 2's most OP item. Let's be honest, after the messiness of Chapter 3, we were starting to get worried that Epic was losing its juice. I mean, when's the last time they have made a truly classic season? Chapter 2? We genuinely thought they couldn't pull off another all-timer, and then it happened, Fortnite Mega. Everybody was in love with this season, from the characters to the POIs and weapons. It was amazing. There was just one complaint across the whole player base. The Kinetic blade, it had to be nerfed. Thanks to the attack and dash, anyone could swoop in, just slice you up, and then fly away. It was ridiculous. Or even if they didn't attack you, they would just use the blade to escape any confrontation. We all know how annoying items like that could be. Mostly because we put up with it just weeks earlier with Season 1's Shockwave hammer. While this was the most unique and fun item Fortnite has introduced in half a decade, it was also a straight up curse. So Epic added a cooldown, but they totally forgot to add a delay to switching. And that one mistake allowed fans to stack 5 Shockwave hammers across the inventory. It literally broke the meta and just ruined things for everyone. Now, earlier I mentioned the messiness of Chapter 3, and I was not exaggerating. This was a rough year for Fortnite, and it all was meant to be redeemed by the finale, the Fracture event. A lot of buildup had been preparing for this, and we were ready to see how the 7 would survive getting chromed. But the Fracture event would go down as the worst one in Fortnite history. It still holds the crown to this day, and that was 3 years ago. Basically, nothing happened. They didn't clarify any of the buildup, and players had to spend over 40 minutes doing the same chores over and over again. It was a total disaster, and to this day, leaks are still coming out showing that it was meant to include way more content. But most of it was scrapped at the last minute, giving Donald Mustard's final event a sour taste. And yeah, that was his final act, because he had decided to leave Epic and throw himself a goodbye party with the previous season of Vibin. It was a pretty fun time, and I know that's a controversial statement since so many people hate this, but the map was cool and it was relaxing after the stress of all the IO wars. There is something I will agree on though, the ballers were a huge problem. We had waited years for these to return. It was super nostalgic for us, and then when Fortnite finally does it, they have charge. We wanted to fly around doing tricks on our hamster ball, and instead we got a glorified electric marble with no battery. All I'm saying is, we needed that Vibin season after putting up with tanks for 3 months. The whole period before this was a war between the IO and the 7, and the headlining new feature was these tanks, except they destroyed players. Especially at the very start of the season when Fortnite introduced Zero Build for the first time. There was a couple weeks where every single player was banned from building. There was no choice of the 2 modes, which meant coming up with new ways to play the game. Problem was, every time you tried to do something, you just get wiped out by a tank cannon. But even builds couldn't protect us in Season 1 when Fortnite revealed the MK7. This was our introduction of first-person guns, and people went crazy for it. It wouldn't have been a problem if this gun wasn't the definition of a laser. You could just beam anyone with barely any recoil and pinpoint accuracy. Of course, it was eventually nerfed because of how overpowered it was, so maybe it's hard to remember, but this thing was the most busted assault rifle in Fortnite history, even worse than a SCAR. Now, there were plenty of OP items before it. Chapter 2 was full of them. In the final season, we were dealing with all kinds of threats, like the Cube Queen and Venom for some reason. Him and Carnage brought 2 symbiote mythics to the game, which seemed innocent at first, until we realized you could drag people to you. It's basically doing Get Over Here from Mortal Kombat years before that actually happened, and it was insanely powerful. You could just straight up kidnap enemies and then drop them from the sky. But people are even more traumatized when I just mention the word UFOs. These were some of the most broken vehicles we've ever had, all thanks to the never-ending spam.
Help me! Help me! What?
Now we've made it to Chapter 2 Season 6, Primal. It is one of the most notoriously hated seasons to ever release in Fortnite, and a lot of the backlash was because of a single experiment, crafting. It was a strange decision from Epic. Instead of turning crafting into a way to upgrade your weapons or make your current game better, they just made it really difficult to find good weapons in the wild. You had to craft them. That involved constantly finding cars for mechanical parts just to build like a gray shotgun. It was horrible. But what about great features that we didn't want to lose? Season 5 brought us an insane amount of crossovers, a huge desert on the map, and the ability to sand tunnel. This was a game-changing experience. Not only was it good for mobility, it lets you defend yourself when low on mats and sneak up on enemies. People loved it, but after a few weeks, it was deleted because of a glitch. And instead of just fixing it as soon as possible, Epic just removed the entire feature, never to return again. And look at that, we are at the first Marble season now. There was a lot to love here, and then I'll remind you of everyone's most hated item, Iron Man's Unibeam. To this day, people still remember the Unibeam as being impossible to fight against. Epic literally designed a cannon that could shoot through walls, and it wasn't an accident or a glitch, it could just do this. You want to box up and heal? Nah, the Unibeam is wiping out your entire build in a second, all while hitting the person inside. Before we had Unibeams ruining your game, we had sharks. The Flood season introduced these guys as our first ever wildlife in Fortnite. I mean, really exciting, right? Not to mention, you could tame them for yourself and ride around. It was really cool on paper, but the problem with wild animals is that, you know, they're wild animals. While sharks and unibeams and UFOs are all unforgettable, there was one item in the Midas season that a ton of players forgot about. It's like we erased this from our memory out of fear, but this is Brutus's minigun. Starting to remember? All I have to do is say what the minigun's purpose was, and you'll already know it's overpowered. This thing had 0 reload, a short cooldown, and an insane fire rate. It shredded builds, it was unstoppable. But what everyone seriously forgot about was in Season 1, our first time on a brand new Fortnite map, and the entire loop pool had been changed. There are so many items to keep track of that nobody remembers the gray RPG, mostly because it didn't last long. This thing was regular floor loot, meaning everyone in the lobby had one, and games became way too chaotic. And now we are back in Chapter 1. What's better to kick this off than probably the most unanimously hated item of all time, Mechs? Just saying, you either know about these or you didn't play Fortnite back then. Those are the two options because everyone was boycotting the brutes. The community started a trend on Twitter called #RemoveTheMech, and Epic responded saying no, they want Fortnite to feel like anyone could win. Did not go well for them at all. Immediately, all pro players began quitting the game in droves. They were in an all-out panic mode and instantly went back on this, nerfing it with fewer rockets, removing the ability to grab materials from walking on things, and slowing down the fire rate. But they were just a hint of what players had to go through in Chapter 1. Every single season there was something Epic added that players just hated. In 9, arguably one of the greatest seasons of all time, it still had its major fault of the combat shotgun. You could hit people from insanely long ranges, and unlike the pump, this could blast over and over again. Basically, if you were playing Season 9, you had to use the combat shotty to have any chance in a fight. And let's not forget about the boom bow before it. Nowadays, this comes back all the time, and it's a pretty balanced weapon, but when it first came out, let me tell you, this was a beast. If you sniped someone from across the map, it would destroy their health and then explode for 100 on top of that. It became the most sought after item of the season, and paired with the flint knock, you could basically trickshot anyone you wanted. So if you can't tell by now, there's a running theme here in Chapter 1. The most hated parts of the seasons were just ridiculously overpowered, but not all of them were weapons. Some, like planes, were added just to get us around the map. Nothing sounded more fun than flying around, shooting down enemies in dogfights. It was amazing. Except, Epic gave them the ability to ram through builds, and this would be devastating. Now, you'd be minding your own business on the ground, only to hear a plane dive bombing you and destroying your entire build. And yeah, you take fall damage. Thanks to the unlimited fuel on the planes, players would grab these and just fly around until the end of a match, and no one could hit them that far up. Not every disliked item was overpowered though, some were just really annoying. Like in Season 6 when we were all mesmerized by the cube. What people tend to forget is how Kevin also brought an entire horde of zombies along with him. Fans were just trying to play a regular game of BR, only to be invaded by constant waves of cube monsters. It got old quick. So did Season 5's drum gun. Now you might be wondering, wait, Tommy, but I love the drum gun. And it's true, millions of people did love this thing, it's why we brought it back during the unvaulting event. But this video is about the most hated part of every season, and nothing compares to the controversy of this thing. While fans did love it, that's really because they were the ones using it. Sadly, anyone who was beamed by this thing immediately turned into a hater. It had one of the most ridiculous fire rates of any weapon, and single-handedly created a new meta. In just one season, we went from shotguns dominating to the birth of the spray and pray. But hey, at least we weren't getting bombarded with stink bombs. That was season 4. These would literally block you from building and healing up, and if an enemy collected tons of them, they would throw them non-stop. The worst part was, it damaged through walls. If only it was around at the same time as the guided missile. Anyone could sit in their box and just fire a rocket through a window, taking out enemies without ever showing their face. Luckily, it got nerfed, but that just ended up making it useless instead, so no one was happy by the end of it. Now earlier, I mentioned how the drum gun created spray and pray, but what existed before that? Well, of course, the double pump. Back in season 2, once this had been discovered, it was game over. Now everyone and their dog was dual wielding pumps, and it guaranteed a kill every single time. People get nostalgic over it, but this was so busted that it broke Fortnite for months. Players refused to pick up anything that wasn't a pump, making the rest of the loot pool pretty much useless. It was a problem that had to be solved ASAP, and that's why Epic introduced shotgun delay. Although it wasn't the first time we had an issue with pump shotguns. Now we're in season 1, the beginning of Battle Royale, and within a short time fans were already tired of getting pumped, mostly because the range was insane. Not exaggerating, the pump shotty used to be a sniper rifle.
95! 10!
We have never seen anything like this before, and hopefully it'll never happen again. Let me know what is your most hated item. It's been Tommy, and keep it here on Top 5 Gaming.